Well, history was made yet again this past weekend as another hero finally reached the hallowed halls of the living legend status. Yes, it has not been updated yet because, of course, it is early morning on Monday, and they usually update this around 3 o'clock, but this living legend leaderboard is going to be -1 hero, and that is because Florian, Rotwood, Harbinger both combined with the RTN wins and the most recent calling win that happened just yesterday has officially crossed over the threshold. And like I said, if you didn't catch up with it or if you didn't watch it, which is kind of crazy because there were a lot of people watching, but this was the bracket in the top 8 of the Calling Columbus. And as you see there, our world champion, Michael Yasker, is the one hero, or the one person to be the hero, to send the hero off into the sunset, winning with Florian against Lucas Oswald, a multiple calling winner himself, on Arachne Marionette. Now, this is a pretty big shakeup to the meta, as Florian, over the past couple of weeks and maybe even the better part of a month, has been making a surging comeback. I think people have started to really understand that the bans and restrictions that took place back at the beginning of December were not nearly as severe as we all perhaps first thought, especially for some of the Earth heroes that they hit. I think these bans were maybe some of the best bans they've ever made, some of the best restrictions they've ever made, because it's allowed all of the heroes that have been touched by those bans and restrictions to still have a spot in the metagame. And this is the proof of that, as Florian has made a surge over the past couple of weeks, both in RTNs, earning a bunch of points, and also here at the Calling Columbus to pick up the win. And also last week, I think Florian also picked up the win at the last week's Calling in Akihabara as well. But that means that Florian Rotwood Harbinger is indeed going to make his way down here at the bottom, joining the ranks of the other heroes who have hit LL. And I know there's a lot of people that kind of go back and forth on whether or not they like this system. It is a system of rotation in one sense. In a sense, it does cause rotation, but I think this is the part where I really enjoy it. I love getting to watch a hero hit that point, and I think LSS has realized that there is, and if they haven't, I'm telling them right now, there is a palpable sense of connection that you have with that moment in time, right? You look at like a lot of sports out there, and sports, I remember the time where I was sitting on the couch and I watched the Seahawks pass the ball at the 1 yard line instead of run it, and it was intercepted by the Patriot. I remember that moment. This is the same type of thing that LSS has either created on purpose or inadvertently created. I remember the moment and where I was sitting and what I was doing when Florian hit the living legend status. And you may not care that much about Florian, but that can apply to any of the heroes that have hit here already. Like, I remember seeing the post that Icelander had crossed the threshold, right? That these are the moments that are created through this living legend system. And this is another moment added to that list, with Florian crossing the finish line on stream. And again, I think this is a benefit to the game, especially now that LSS is committing to even more coverage and week-to-week coverage, almost like a sport. You're seeing this coverage, and you're going to have more of these moments pop up on stream because we can actually watch it happen in real time, week to week. But it's not the only thing we should talk about, because with Florian going, there are some options and some other things that could happen. First and foremost, he might not be the only hero that actually hits living legend status in the next week or two, because KO Armed and Dangerous is also quite close to that threshold as well. And keep in mind, KO now falls under the 2+ year bracket, meaning that he gets the 1.5x multiplier. And KO was also quite winning in last RTN, like the last weekend's RTN results. So if he does pretty decently well in this past weekend's results, he could be right knocking on that door as well, and could also exit the format at the end of the RTN season. I think there's 1 week left of RTNs, and depending on how many wins he picked up, he could also move out of the format as well. I know some people also mentioned the fact that Prism is sort of creeping up closer and closer. I don't expect her to, come out of the woodwork and win like, top 4 numbers within these next 2 weekends. I think that would be crazy. If she did out of nowhere, we could have 3 heroes rotate, but do keep in mind, there are also going to be Classic constructed Pro Quest events that take place starting in February for Pro Tour Las Vegas. So there is a real chance that Florian and KO go in the next 2 weeks. Obviously, Florian goes like today, or by Friday, I think is how the policy works. But there's a real chance that KO goes in the next week or 2. And there's a sort of a sneaking suspicion that Prism could make her way out of the format over the next 2 months. And it couldn't just be her. It might also be Verdance if Verdance surges back in popularity. Verdance would have to make up a lot of ground, but she also is now sitting in the 1x multiplier. So she's not getting her points halved. She can now earn full points. And that means that if she has a surge in playability to try and respond to like Fatigue Pleiades and so on and so forth, then Verdance could also go as well. We could see 4 heroes in less months, like 4 heroes in 2 to 3 months hit the Living Legend leaderboard, opening up more possibilities for more of these heroes down here, which is quite exciting when you think about it. Now, there's other things to discuss as well, because if Florian goes, you take a look at Florian here on the matchup matrix in Fablazing's data set. By the way, you should use Fablazing's data if you want to know more about the meta, if you want to kind of see how these matchups are playing out in paper. It's literally using a custom metric. I don't know if you can see this. You can. I set this to be calling Columbus Classic Constructed results, calling Akihabara, calling Hong Kong, and then I did go back and do Battle Hardened Seoul, Battle Hardened Vienna, and calling Seattle. So I did go back kind of far for this, but I think more data is nice to see. Even though I would describe this as a very evolving meta, it is nice to see across all of these tournaments how these matchups have been playing out. And this is where Florian stacks up. Florian been doing decently well, and the more of these like more recent tournaments we lean on and the less of the older ones, the higher his win rate goes, just by a little bit. It creeps up a little bit. But what does this mean? If he exits the format, you want to look at his positive matchups, because those are points that he's giving back to the heroes that he was playing against. Like, for example, Arachne Marionette, he was 66% into Arachne Marionette, which is quite good for him and bad for Arachne Marionette. So if now he exits the format, Arachne loses that bad matchup and now has a more comfortable time in a more open meta. That's a very interesting prospect, because we already know that Arachne Marionette is essentially considered the top deck in the format and can play on multiple axes. It can be a more slow, grindy type control deck, but not super control. But it can play that game plan out and really fatigue certain matchups, but it can also be very aggressive and just hit the high roll a couple of times and win the game. So Arachne Marionette might be getting even better going forward, depending on how some of these other heroes go up. Now, Florian also had a positive win rate into Dash.io, had a positive win rate into Kasai, had a positive win rate into KO, and that's a big one, because if you are wondering if KO is going to exit the format, KO is now getting a couple of percentage points by losing a bad matchup. Had a positive win rate into Dorinthia, who's been a little bit more played recently, and against Reinar and against Vinsat, and down the line as well. So giving some points back to some of the heroes that are already being played a little bit more. Kasai could indeed make a little bit of a surge here. Kasai still has a bad matchup into a couple of different heroes. Like, for example, I would say the Marionette matchup is tough, and there's some other heroes that I think are also going to be pretty solid, like Acilio and maybe KO if he survives. Kasai still has some work to do to maintain that A-tier hero status in my mind, but I'm also looking at Dash.io. Dash.io has a positive matchup into Marionette so far based on these paper records. cards, as you can see there on the screen. Dash.io, a little bit unfavored into Gravy, doing decently well into Syndra over the past couple of tournaments. Struggling a little bit into Verdance as well, but we'll see how that plays out. And then this is where I see Dash.io being quite powerful, is against Acilio, because people are indeed pushing Acilio right now quite heavily. So there are a couple of options for players that are maybe coming off of Florian and pivoting over to other heroes, or if you're just looking to answer this new meta without Florian, I think that there are certainly some heroes like Dash.io, maybe Kasai of the world, and then definitely Marionette as well, being perhaps the biggest point getter from losing that one singular bad matchup, which is kind of crazy. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out without him, and especially interesting if KO also goes, even though KO's not making as many waves in the meta as of now. Nevertheless, change is always exciting, and do keep in mind that when we have a hero rotate like Florian here, there are other heroes that are going to come and replace that hero. You have Florian, you have KO. These two heroes might be exiting the format very soon, and they might not be the only ones. So tell me what you think about this in the comments down below. I want to hear from you. How do you feel about Florian making his grand exit from the classic constructed format, and who do you think is going to replace him towards the top of this metagame? If you enjoy this type of content, of course, make the number go to the other number down here, because that's what we do on this channel, and I totally appreciate you. Thank you so much for watching.